6. The real reason she can't manifest. As the voices kept torturing her, she tossed throughout the night. When she looked into the mirror the very next morning, she found a pair of puffy eyes resembling a panda staring back at her. While waiting for breakfast with her grandfather and brothers, she chatted a bit and cheered them up. Dyson, Elijah, why haven't you guys gone to the academy? Vincent, Harry, don't you have errands to run? Alex asked, but before she could look at them properly, she got distracted as her eyes rested on the dishes on the table that the maids placed before her. They looked pretty much the same as yesterday's unpalatable breakfast. Her brows furrowed deeply as she reluctantly picked up her fork and stared at the dishes before her. We were waiting for you. We had to make sure that you were all right first. We still have some time. It's not too late to leave, Vincent replied. She picked and nibbled on breakfast and put her fork down midway. Why did you stop eating? Dorian asked, concerned. The food is horrible, and I've lost all my appetite, Alex replied matter-of-factly. Haven't you been eating like this your whole life? Dorian asked in a befuddled tone as he looked at the breakfast before him and couldn't find any difference from what they usually had. Since Alex doesn't want to eat anymore, clear the table, Dorian said aloud. The maid scurried over and cleared up the table quickly. The other brothers didn't voice out any opinions, as they didn't really need to rely on food anymore. The only reason they were eating together was to spend time with Alex. Well then, we'll head over to the academy. Elijah stood up as he prepared to leave. We'll also head out now, Vincent chimed in. Go on, go ahead. Dorian waved his hands casually, and after all the brothers left, it was just the two of them alone. Dorian asked, Alex, what are your plans for today? What are you going to do? Her initial plan was to study more about this new world, and she wanted to go to the library to read and gather more information. But the quality of food here haunted her so much that she blurted out, I want to go to the kitchen and have a look. I want to teach the chefs a thing or two about cooking. Teach the chefs how to cook? Dorian choked, staring at her, eyes wide. Yes. Oh, weren't you invited by the Emperor to discuss some things? Don't worry, I won't go out. I'll be good and stay home all day, she reassured him. She knew her grandpa was afraid that if she went out on her own, she might get hurt again. Now that she'd given him her word, he should be more assured. Alex stayed in the kitchen all day, and when Dorian returned from the palace, she called out, excited. Grandfather, come quickly! Try out these new dishes we prepared! She grabbed a fork and picked up the closest dish and fed it straight into Dorian's mouth. Mmm! Dorian was surprised as he closed his eyes and slowly savored the delicious food. What is this? How is it so delicious? This was what I taught them today. How is it? Isn't it delicious? She asked with a sparkle in her eyes. Much better than before. Dorian beamed with pride. Of course, they spent the whole day practicing to finally get to this point, she quipped. Although they failed to meet her requirements, this was still much better than what she'd been eating the past few days. Grandfather, I would like to go to our book pavilion to have a look at some books. The book pavilion was what they called the library in her previous world. She really had to get used to the different terms they used in this new world. You want to read? Dorian shouted aloud and started coughing as he choked on the food and stared at her, bewildered. His reaction made the whole kitchen look at their master as they craned their necks and stared. One couldn't blame them for their reaction, as Alex was known as trash and only attended the academy for 2 days. A book had never been seen in their master's delicate hands, let alone reading a whole book. Alex wanted to read a book, and going to the book pavilion was shocking news indeed. Dorian returned to his usual calm demeanor and said, If you want to have a look, let's go have a look. As soon as he said that, he strode out of the kitchen in big steps as Alex quickly followed behind. They came to a large courtyard with a 3-story building. It was a simple-looking building built in the middle of a plain yard. No one would have guessed that this inconspicuous building was the book pavilion. Here we are. Dorian flipped his hands and a large key suddenly appeared. He unlocked the door and gently pushed it open as the scent of musky books greeted them. This was the first time she had been here. Although the book pavilion was located in between her courtyard and the main entrance, the old Alex had never once ventured in here. Here, this key is yours. Dorian casually flipped his hands once again and retrieved another key and handed it over to her. All the other 4 brothers each had a key to this place. However, as she didn't enjoy reading, this key was never passed to her, for fear that she might lose it. Alex took the key and put it in her pocket. She couldn't manifest and had no spiritual power. Hence, she could not use the inner spatial ring, from which spirit masters retrieved objects. All right, go ahead and read whatever you want. Take your time. I've still got some things that I have to do. I'll be in my study. If you need me, you know where to find me. Dorian turned to leave. Alex nodded, and only after she watched him leave did she turn to take a good look inside. Although she knew that there were some problems with her current body, there were still some differences with the herbs and materials from her world and this. At least, she hoped that they were merely name differences. She needed to know more about the differences in the properties as well, and study them more thoroughly to be able to cure herself and get rid of this trash label. Alex gaped in wonder as she looked at the interior of the book pavilion. Who would have thought that the exterior looked like any other common building, but the interior was unexpectedly different. Alex tried to compose herself, but the beauty of floating objects around her simply mesmerized her. After she'd finally regained her composure, she grew anxious. With so many books, where should I even start looking? If I'd known, I would have asked my grandfather. She sighed with regret, looking helplessly at the grand collection of books before her. She started exploring the books on the shelves, and after looking for a while, she discovered that the books were arranged according to different categories. If this row of books on this shelf was in one category, the following 10 rows were in a similar one. Aha! Found it! She cried out in relief. After scouring for 2 whole hours, she had finally found the category she came for. She earnestly started to look for the books she needed, as she carefully combed the shelves with medical-related books. She looked for quite some time until she found a book about the various herbs and materials for medicine, and discovered that this whole shelf had the same genre of books. Her stomach rumbled, and she touched her belly as she groaned in defeat. She quickly pulled out several books and hugged them carefully and left the book pavilion, locking the door securely as she left. By this time, the day had already turned to night, and it was completely dark outside. When Alex returned to her own courtyard, Emery and Stella noticed a pile of books in their master's hands. They hurried forward to assist and asked, "Sir, would you like to have some dinner?" "Yes, I'm famished." "Bring the meal directly into my room. Also, Emery, please pass the message to my grandfather that for the next 2 days, I'll be dining in my room and won't be joining the family for meals." Alex picked up a book and started reading. The books that she'd selected this time around were all very general and were introductions to the basic of herbs and materials that were common in this world. Alex was extremely intelligent in her past life and carried that onto this one. She quickly scanned the books and understood new concepts about this world. "Sir, your dinner is ready." Stella placed the meal gently on the table. Alex immediately put the book down, and her gaze rested on the dishes placed on the table. Seeing that the steaming hot dishes that were visually enticing were a stark contrast with meals before, she smacked her lips and gave a satisfied nod and said, "This is what I call a meal." After she finished the first book, she discovered that here, the ordinary materials for medicine were similar to her previous world, but had some minute discrepancies. For example, some names were different, some had similar properties, but there were also some unfamiliar names that she came across. She discovered that these books were from the same shelf, and they were further segregated into similar materials and properties. Realizing this, she quickly looked up each particular material and herb and studied them carefully. Luckily, I went through these books first. Almost half of the names were different from before. Alex stretched her body lazily and stifled a yawn as she looked at a recipe she'd written down before realizing it was almost dawn. Because she didn't manage to get a good sleep last night, and she worked hard throughout this entire night, after she relaxed, her eyelids were extremely heavy. She crawled to bed, and as soon as her head touched the pillow, she fell into a deep slumber. Tonight, she didn't have a single dream. She woke up in the afternoon and finally rolled out of bed, washed up, and changed. Stella quickly prepared lunch and brought it into the room. After lunch, she took the recipe that she had painstakingly written down last night and walked towards Dorian's study. When Dorian saw Alex, he was somewhat surprised. Wasn't it only last night that she said she'd be busy reading in her own room for the next 2 days? Why was she out so soon? She couldn't sit still for just 2 days? Or did something happen? "Grandfather, I have something to ask you." She straightened her back and looked at him earnestly. "What's the matter?" When Dorian saw how serious Alex looked, he waved his hands and signaled for the bodyguards to exit. Alex pulled a chair, sat down across from his desk, and said, "Grandfather, do you know why I can't manifest my spiritual powers? All the doctors who examined you before had all diagnosed that your meridians are blocked. That's why you can't sense the spirit energy in the air, rendering you unable to manifest. When your father carried you back, he mentioned that your mother was injured, and that might have potentially affected the fetus. Why? What's the matter? Why did you bring it up again?" Dorian gave her a strange look. "Grandfather, I suspect the real reason behind my blocked meridians is not because of a congenital issue, but something else," Alex said cautiously. What could possibly be the reason for her inability to manifest like others? Episode 7. About the Professions in Vanka. Alex said softly, "I've been poisoned, and it's the reason my meridians are blocked. After some research, I think the reason I can't manifest and this matter are related." Bang! Dorian stood up suddenly, toppling the chair he was sitting on. Is this true?" Dorian looked at his delicate granddaughter and asked. Alex nodded and pressed on. "I'm sure, Grandfather. This poison is rare and not easy to detect. And this poison has been in my body for a long time. It seems like I was poisoned at the time of my birth. The Emperor sent quite a few people to check your condition before, including renowned doctors and alchemists. They could only determine that your meridians were blocked and didn't detect any trace of poison," Dorian said. Alex knew that the Emperor of Vanka, Emperor Bertram, was very fond of Dorian. He'd certainly sent the best of the kingdom over, so if even they couldn't detect the poison, it showed how rare that poison was in this world. Maybe the poison is very rare in our kingdom. Besides, there are no other symptoms other than blocked meridians. If I hadn't touched the 2 small points under my arms, I wouldn't have found it either. So it's understandable that no one else could detect it," Alex said. "When your father brought you back, he said that your mother was injured, so he thought that your development may have been affected. But I didn't expect your meridians to be blocked due to poisoning." Dorian sighed with regret. "Grandfather, wasn't I born at home? What do you mean by when your father brought you back?" Alex felt that Dorian was behaving odd. "When you were born, your parents were not in Pyron Town, and your father only brought you back when you were around 6 months old. He said that he had to go look for your mother, left you in our care, and never returned," Dorian said wistfully. "Alex, how did you discover that you were poisoned? Who diagnosed it? Tell Grandfather. I want to ask them to get the antidote for you." Alex shook her head and said, "Grandfather, don't worry. No one else examined me. I found it myself." "You found out yourself?" Dorian looked at her in disbelief, saying, "Don't lie to me. What is it that you can't tell me? Did that person make you say that it's a secret?" Alex remembered that the old Alex was completely useless and didn't harbor much intellectual knowledge. If she were to suddenly say that it was really her, Dorian would definitely not believe it. So she took out the recipe and said, "Grandfather, here's the recipe for my cure. Have servants go get these herbs and materials from the list. Remember to do it with utmost secrecy." "Well, I know what to do." Dorian nodded, and he reached out and took the recipe from her to look at it. Although the handwriting was awkward, considering her lack of training in the past, Dorian nodded with satisfaction as he called out, "Come, follow this recipe and bring the ingredients back." "Yes, sir." 2 bodyguards came in and carefully took the recipe and headed out. After settling this task, Alex casually walked back. She returned to her yard, locked herself in her room, and continued to read. She had to spend more time looking through these books, as she had to research the topic more intensively to gain a better understanding. Soon, the herbs from the list were delivered to Alex. She took those herbs and checked them thoroughly. Only after determining that everything was in order did she get Emery to prepare the medicine. She even gave specific instructions on its preparation method. After having them prepare the bath and making sure that they had all left, did she slowly step into the red medicinal water. Once she had completely immersed her body in the medicinal bathwater, she felt her whole body burn up as if on fire, as an intense pain went through her whole body. Damn it! I didn't realize it would hurt so much. Alex cursed out loud as she writhed about in pain. Her whole body felt as if there were flames lit on it, burning every inch of her body. The medicinal bath soon came into effect, as she felt another surge of energy fuse together, further intensifying the heat, and she felt like her body may explode any moment. The red medicated bathwater soon turned clear, and her head felt foggy for a moment, when suddenly she felt a sweet sensation well up in her throat. Before she knew it, she vomited out a mouthful of black substance. After she could no longer spit anything out, she finally felt better and regained some clarity. It's a lot smaller now, Alex muttered after touching the two little dots under her arm. It seems like it's going to take a few more sessions to completely clear out this poison. She sighed and gritted her teeth, thinking back on the pain she had to go through. As soon as she came out of the bath and dressed herself, she kicked the huge wooden barrel and the whole barrel tilted slightly as a huge amount of bathwater gushed onto the floor, washing the black substance away. Sir, is everything all right? Emery and Stella asked from outside the room. Oh, I was a bit careless and accidentally spilled the bath. Can you come in and help me clean it up? Alex replied casually. The two maids rushed in and saw that some of the water in the bath had spilled onto the floor. They brought in dry clothes and cleaned the whole floor, and removed the wooden barrel soon after. The next few days, aside from having her meals with Dorian, Alex spent her time burying herself in the books. She had almost finished reading them. In the blink of an eye, 7 days passed, and this was her last medicinal bath. Alex immersed herself in the red bathwater once again, and after a quarter of an hour passed by, this time the substance she vomited out was no longer black, but it had a familiar vibrant crimson shade. She quickly touched under her arm and found that the two small dots were gone. She checked her pulse and confirmed that the poison had been completely removed from her body. Although she didn't know if she could start to manifest after removing the poison, she still couldn't help but feel exhilarated and excited. After she used the same method to wash the substance away as on previous days, she grabbed the huge key and walked towards the book pavilion. This time, the book she wanted to look for would be on manifestation methods. She wanted to see if she could embark on her manifestation path, now that the poison had been completely flushed from her system. Alex leaned against the bookshelf as she quickly read through the contents of a book. However, the more she read, the more she couldn't hide her surprise as she sighed, amazed. She was really living in a fantasy world. According to the book, people can manifest because there's a spiritual aura in the air. The body absorbs it and transforms this spiritual aura into spiritual power. And the more of it one has, the stronger one is. Similarly to the distinctions in their powers, spirit masters are categorized into various grades. The grades are namely Spirit Warrior, Spirit Lord, Great Spirit Master, Spirit King, Spirit Overlord, Spirit Saint, and Spirit Paragon, with the corresponding colors red, orange, yellow, green and blue, blue and purple. Each grade is further divided into 9 minor grades, with each minor grade depicted by a small star, and a moon depicting one major rank. For example, a 6th grade Spirit Warrior, when drawing out his spirit energy, 6 little stars would show by his feet, while for 6th grade Spirit Lord, it would show a moon and 6 little stars. And for a Grand Spirit Master, it would show 2 moons, and so on. Although Spirit Masters held dominance over the world, they were few in numbers, as not every single person was able to sense and detect the spiritual powers in the air. As Spirit Masters held great powers, they were greatly revered and enjoyed high status in the world. Besides Spirit Masters, there were other highly regarded professions. In opposing relativity would be the Sword Master. A Sword Master would work with all those unable to sense the spiritual powers in the air, and rely solely on developing the force they infuse into their swords, named Sword's Aura. Besides developing their swordsmanship, Sword Masters train their physical strength as well, as the stronger their bodies get, the more force they would be able to sustain and bear with their swords. Each grade is further divided into 9 minor grades, with each minor grade depicted by a small star, and a moon depicting one major rank. For example, a 6th grade Spirit Warrior, when drawing out his spirit power, 6 little stars would show by his feet, while for a 6th grade Spirit Lord, it would show a moon and 6 little stars. And for a Grand Spirit Master, it would show 2 moons, and so on. The different grades for Sword Masters were namely Swordsman, Sword Master, Grand Sword Master, Sword King, Sword Overlord, Sword Saint, and Sword Paragon. The sword's aura was also categorized by 7 colors: red, orange, yellow, green and blue, blue and purple. And every grade was similarly split further into minor grades, from 1 to 9. One minor grade was corresponded by a tiny sword, while a major grade was depicted by a saber. Although Spirit Masters and Sword Masters are rare in the world, compared to other occupations, their numbers were considered to be rather numerous, as the other occupations were even more rare. These occupations would include alchemists, weaponsmith masters, beast tamer masters, and array masters. And every profession had its own unique strengths. Spirit Masters were able to form a contract with the Spirit Beast. After establishing the contract, the Spirit Master and the Spirit Beast would merge, as their souls became intricately linked through a blood link. But as Spirit Beasts were wild and savage in nature, a Spirit Master who forms a direct contract with a Spirit Beast would be harmed by this ferocious and savage aura. Hence, there was a need for a Beast Tamer Master. Beast Tamer Masters use their abilities at taming to remove and eradicate the savagery in Spirit Beasts, to enable Spirit Masters to safely form a contract with them. As for the Spirit Beast, after the contract, they would contribute a strong boost in power as they fought alongside their contracted masters. So Beast Tamer Masters were highly regarded. But to become a Beast Tamer Master, one must also first become a Spirit Master. Besides that, Weaponsmith Masters and Array Masters were also a branch of Spirit Masters, and that fact made Alex rather speechless. Seems like I better start training. Alex got up from the floor, and after searching through the bookshelves for a while, she finally found an entry-level book covering the most basic of training and manifestation. She looked up into the sky and saw that it was getting late. She brought the book back to her room, and after dinner, she locked herself in and sat up in bed to read. She followed what was written in the book and attempted to sense the spiritual aura in the air through meditation. Initially, she didn't feel a single thing, but after some time, she seemed to feel something indescribable swirling around her. It wasn't until dawn broke that she was finally able to properly sense those things as multicolored specks of light. Alex opened her eyes and broke her meditative trance, feeling rather puzzled. Didn't the book say they came in only one color? Why did she feel like they were multiple colors? That's strange. She didn't understand why the specks of light she had sensed were of different colors. The book specifically said that people were normally able to sense only one singular color of lights. Did she do it wrong? Will Alex be able to manifest successfully? Episode 8. Father's Gift. Alex, confused about the lights she saw, found Dorian and shared her discoveries with him. That's actually very simple, Dorian said, looking at his granddaughter's tiny face. He continued with a smile. The spiritual aura would differ in color, according to their different attributes or properties. Properties? Yes, my dear. The properties show the type of spiritual aura one can train and manifest in. Red is the color for fire attributes, and when you're training, they absorb the red-colored specks of light. Green is for wood attributes, and while you're training, they absorb the green specks of light. Similarly, water attributes would be blue, while metal attributes would be gold. Earth attributes would be brown, light attributes would be white, and darkness attributes would be black. Usually, the color of light that one is able to sense and detect would mean the type of powers that person would be able to manifest. So that's how it works. Alex nodded her head. When she recalled the multicolored lights she'd seen that morning, she asked, "What if I saw a variety of color lights?" Dorian didn't know why Alex was suddenly so interested in these matters of training and manifestation, but he still replied patiently, "When one can sense many colors of lights, that would be someone we call multifaceted spirit masters." Multifaceted spirit masters? Yes. For example, if one can sense both red and gold-colored specks of light, they would be fire and metal, a dual-faceted spirit master. If they can sense 3 types, they would be a trifaceted spirit master. But multifaceted spirit masters are very rarely seen. And if they are found, they would usually be highly revered. What if all the colors were visible? Alex asked innocently. All the colors visible? That's the most elusive perfect prism. Dorian spoke out, his eyes revealing a trace of longing. But someone with this attribute hasn't been seen in hundreds and thousands of years. If such a person appears, I wonder what type of storm it would set off. Oh yeah, Alex. Why are you asking me this today? Alex wanted to tell him that she had the very perfect prism that he had just spoken of. But she decided to hold it in, until she could manifest properly and surprise him even more. Alex, unless... Can you sense the spiritual aura in the air? Dorian asked, his face lit up with hope. Yes. She laughed when he saw his reaction. This grandfather of hers was really too adorable. Are you telling the truth? Can you really sense the spiritual aura in the air? He was overwhelmed with emotions as he gave her a big hug. She nodded her head and affirmed. Yes, the poison in my body has been completely cleared, and my meridians are no longer blocked. I embarked on my manifestation journey last night, and only by this morning, I was able to grasp a faint sense of spiritual aura. What? Dorian froze and gave her a strange glance. Alex was worried by this change. She picked up her courage and asked, Grandfather, was that not a spiritual aura that I've sensed? Could I have gotten it wrong? Ha ha ha! Dorian burst out with hearty laughter. I knew our Alex wasn't trash. You're a genius. Not just any genius. A genius amongst geniuses. Alex couldn't help but worry when she saw his face was flushed red with excitement. He didn't answer her directly, but his reaction was enough. Dorian finally calmed down as he looked at her gently and said, Alex, for one to sense the spiritual aura in just one night is unheard of. What you've just accomplished is a huge deal. I was also called a genius, but I took 4 or 5 days to be able to comprehend a faint spiritual aura when I first started out. The average person takes about half a month, and yet some are still unable to sense it. Out of your few brothers, the fastest one took a week. Not only can you manifest, but your level of comprehension is absurdly high. Alex was stunned when she heard this. She initially thought that taking a whole night to sense the spiritual aura was considered a long time. To her surprise, it was the complete opposite, and it was exceptionally quick. What a relief. She had some talent after all. She wouldn't need to waste a lot of time then. Alex, what color did you see? Dorian asked. His curiosity piqued, keen to understand more about her power. Alex wanted to have sufficient strength before she revealed her talent, lest someone gets jealous like the stranger from her past life. And as Dorian just told her, someone with these attributes hadn't been seen in 100,000 years. If her abilities were made public, it may bring about a disaster for her family. Grandfather, I can only sense the red spiritual aura, she replied softly. Her mother and her other brothers were all of the fire attribute, so it wasn't too strange she was the same as them. Well, every member in our family is of the fire attribute. It seems you are too. Dorian nodded happily as he added, Tonight, be sure to call all your brothers here. Let us celebrate. We'll let everyone know that you can manifest. After tonight, let's see who still dares to call you trash. Grandfather, I think it's better that we keep this between us for now, Alex pleaded. Why should we? I know that even though you don't say it, you still care about other people's opinions. I know that you used to hide in the yard to hide and cry. That's why, when you said you didn't want to go to the academy, I didn't force you. He was confused. I'm 14 years old, and I've not been able to manifest. If we tell everyone that I can suddenly manifest, wouldn't that lead to a lot of unnecessary trouble? People will talk and keep disturbing me to prove my powers. Wouldn't it be safer to keep it under wraps for now? Dorian furrowed his brow and said, But you are concerned with what other people think, and you are my granddaughter. Why should you have to shoulder all of this on your own? It's true that I used to be very upset that I couldn't manifest. However, it was based on the fact that I really wasn't able to do it, rather than what other people were saying about me. Now that I can manifest, I don't care about what others say. Besides, whether I can manifest or not is my own matter. Others don't have the right to interfere. If people find out I can manifest and increase the strength of our family, I'm afraid that might create unwanted trouble too. Don't you have plenty of enemies? Especially the Mason family. They've always been against us. If they found out about my talent, they might cause extra trouble. Dorian looked at her warmly. Ever since she was heavily wounded the last time, she seemed to have really changed. No longer was she unruly. She became sensible and thoughtful. Well, what you've just said makes sense, he gruffed. We'll leave it for now, but you'll still have to call all your brothers out tonight. We'll celebrate it just between us, he said reluctantly, trying to change his tone to a more cheerful one. All right, I'll go back and practice first. I'll meet you for dinner when all my brothers come back tonight. She turned to leave. Wait a minute. Dorian stopped her in her tracks. What's the matter, Grandpa? She queried. Come with me for a moment. He turned and led her to a corner of his study and touched a tile on the wall. He pressed firmly, and with a click sound, a small hole appeared next to the bookshelf. He reached in and pulled something, and a small entrance appeared in front of them, with a ladder leading down. He flicked his wrist, and a light pearl appeared in his palm as he turned to her and nodded. Let's go, he said. Alex curiously walked behind him as he led her down into the secret room through a long, narrow corridor, and it was a while till they finally came to a stop. We're here. He led her into a small stone room. Alex looked around and found that, other than a small stone table in the center with a small box on it, there was nothing else. He walked towards the box and wistfully said, This was what your father left for you before he left to find your mother. He said that if you were ever able to manifest, I should give this box to you. I hereby pass this to you. He let out a small sigh as he looked at her. Alex felt that something was odd, but couldn't pinpoint what it was. He seemed emotional as he passed her the box. She was about to open it when he stopped her. Go back and open it when you're alone. He was very insistent, and she could only helplessly comply and nodded in response. Let's go back now. Once she left his study, she went back to her room, rushing past everyone in sight. She sat on her bed and looked intently at the box. Dorian mentioned earlier that she could trust her mates, Emery and Stella. Dorian made them swear the oath to never betray her. He made sure that they swore their allegiance to Alex. The contract bonded them regardless of consequences. The power of oath in this world had magic imbued in it. It was a contract sworn to heaven and earth. If the person were ever to break their oath, they would be forced into hell, never to leave. So, no matter how she treated them, they could never betray her. This, however, was known to the old Alex. Due to her feisty temper, Dorian kept it from her. Alex looked at the box, clasped in her hands. She felt a myriad of feelings stir within her as she looked at it. Part of her wanted to satisfy her curiosity and open it, while another part was cautious, fearing that if she opened it, somehow there'd be no way back. What could possibly be in that box? Episode 9. The Academy. I must see what's inside, Alex convinced herself as she broke open the seal and lifted the lid of the box. Inside the box lay a simple ring, a piece of leather parchment, and a dark stone. She picked up the leather parchment and took a look. There was a map drawn on it, and a house was deliberately marked out. Other than that, she couldn't find anything else that had a clue to what this place was. She wanted to put the map back, but noticed that there was an envelope there. What's this? The envelope was signed with, "To my daughter." She unsealed it, and a piece of paper slipped out. Her face grew more and more serious as she read. The letter wasn't very long. It stated that the ring left for her was an ancient artifact and was a prized family heirloom. It was, in fact, a rare interspatial ring. She found it peculiar that if this was really a family heirloom, why wouldn't Dorian know about this? She had a feeling that there was more to her family history. She placed the ring back, as she was yet to manifest enough to amass sufficient spiritual aura to harness the power of a spiritual master. She couldn't yet make the ring hers, as a drop of blood was needed to form the bond, and that too required spiritual power. Her fingers deftly glossed over the map as her eyes studied the lines and landmarks drawn on it. Her father also mentioned that this map was very important, and she should never ever let anyone know that she had it. This leather parchment looked a little worn, and it seemed like it had quite a bit of history behind it. She had no clue to what this map was for. Their letter didn't say anything else. So he left me a deteriorated map? This cheap father of mine? The least he could do was tell me what the map was for. What use is it to me otherwise? She shook her head and sighed in despair, not knowing why that man had to make everything so mysterious, leaving her completely helpless. Finally, she picked up the last item in the box, the dark piece of stone, and carefully placed it on her palm, bringing it closer and studied it intently. After a while, she sighed in exasperation, trying to figure out why this small stone was an ancient artifact, as the letter claimed it to be. It's just a black stone. A little smooth and rounded like a pebble. Looks a little like obsidian. Is it really an ancient artifact? She raised an eyebrow, doubtful, muttering to herself. Father also wrote that this stone chooses its master. Perhaps it's not meant to be, so I can't see what's special about it. Alex finally placed the small stone back into the box, after fiddling with it a while longer, closed the lid, and started to manifest. As long as she could become a spirit master, she would be able to bind the interspatial ring and make it hers, by putting a drop of her blood on it. Then she'd be able to see what was stored inside. A part of her was very curious about the items that her father had left behind for her. She gently touched the illusion ring on her finger as she cursed. Why was the interspatial ring so difficult? If only it was convenient like this illusion ring, without so many complicated conditions. That would be nice. Soon, it was time for dinner, and Alex stopped meditating and got ready. Those brothers of hers should most likely be back by now. Sir, Master Elijah just came and is waiting for you, Emery informed Alex from outside the door. All right, let him know I'll be out soon, she replied as she got off her bed. Yes, sir. Alex quickly stuffed the box under her pillow and left. In her hurry, she didn't notice that a faint glow was emitted from within the box. Elijah, why are you here? Alex walked over to the table where he was drinking tea. Oh, I'm here to call you for dinner. He gave her a wide smile. You could have just asked a servant to let me know. Why did you come yourself? Since you've come all the way here just to pick me up, we should get going. He followed her as they walked over to the dining hall. He hesitated for a moment before saying, I've got something else to tell you. What is it? She turned her head and asked. Master Mullen has given an ultimatum. He said that if you don't appear in the academy tomorrow, the principal will expel you from the academy. Even if the king pleads on your behalf, you won't be able to attend, Elijah said. Master Mullen? Who's Master Mullen? Alex blinked, genuinely puzzled. Elijah bitterly smiled and patted her head. Your class teacher, Master Mullen. Alex furrowed her brows as she struggled to think. She seemed to have little recollection. This Master Mullen was a teacher in charge of her class, but he also controlled a lot of other things in school. If you don't want to go, I'll let Master Mullen know on your behalf. He paused. It's just that you won't be able to attend the academy anymore. No need, I'll just go to the academy with you tomorrow. She shook her head. Before, she had no interest in the academy as she couldn't manifest. But now that she was able to, studying would let her be more exposed to the various teachings and methods. Although it was a little too soon, it didn't pose a big problem. During dinner, Alex expressed her interest in attending the academy to Dorian. He had the same thoughts as her. Since she could manifest now, going to the academy would be a good choice. Once her 4 brothers learned that she could manifest, they congratulated her one by one, letting her feel the warmth of a family, as they were exhilarated and genuinely happy for her. After dinner, Alex went back to her room and continued meditating. Except this time, she didn't only observe the different little light orbs. She also tried to absorb them. At first, she experienced some resistance, but after a few tries, the first orb was absorbed in, as she seamlessly guided it along her meridians and into her abdomen. After the first one was successfully absorbed, the second light orb was followed by the third, and everything after that was just as easily done. While she was manifesting this time, there was a spectrum of lights shining out from the box, which she'd put under her pillow. When the different colored lights shone out, more little orbs of light gathered around her as she quickly absorbed them. Late into the night, she had to stop manifesting as she had to attend the academy in the morning. Once she stopped her meditation, the light from the box disappeared completely, leaving no trace of that beautiful spectacle. Early next morning, Alex climbed onto the beast carriage that would bring her to the academy. This carriage was similar to those carriages in her past life, except the ones pulling it weren't horses, but spirit beasts. Dorian arranged a wolf carriage for Alex, with 4 majestic and magnificent wind wolves, every single one of them a 5th low-ranked beast. Low-ranked spirit beasts, sought by many as a contract beast, were being used to pull a carriage for Alex instead. This attracted a lot of attention, as people smiled wryly at this luxury. "Elijah, where's Dyson?" she asked as she looked around the massive carriage, and saw that it was just the 2 of them. "Oh, he left earlier before dawn to meet with his classmates to do a mission today," he replied casually. "Went on a mission?" Wide-eyed Alex looked at her brother, imploring him to explain more. Elijah closed the book that he was reading as he looked up and patiently explained. "The academy is not only a place for studying theory, it's also a place to gain some experience. The academy occasionally arranges some missions for students to accomplish. They have various missions designated for different levels, and they're usually not too difficult. This time, he's gone out for a field mission, so it would take him some time to complete it. I don't think he will be back anytime soon." "That explains it." Alex nodded with a satisfied expression. It seemed like the academy won't be so boring after all. "I forgot to tell you last night that the academy is holding their entrance selection for 2 days, and it just started yesterday. So if you're interested, you can go and have a look. I'll be busy the entire morning as I've got a prior engagement with my master, so I'm afraid I won't accompany you. If you want to go and have a look, can you wait until after lunch? I can meet you then and we can have a look together," Elijah said. "Don't worry so much. If you're busy, don't let me hold you up. If I want to, can just head over on my own." She shook her head and refused. She knew that her brother was concerned about her and was worried that she'd be bored or someone may cause trouble with her. But she couldn't rely on him all the time. At her age, she was already old enough to be independent. Besides, the soul was more mature than the body. "You've really grown up." Elijah couldn't help but look at her affectionately as he smiled. He was only 3 years older, yet he spoke as if he was much older than her. She quickly cast her gaze outside the window to cover the awkwardness she felt. Outside, the street was hustling and bustling with activity. As Elijah had mentioned earlier, it was time for the selection for the academy, so the capital was especially lively this time of the year. The wolf carriage brought them directly to the front gates of the academy, and Elijah walked her to the classroom and nagged and fussed to make sure she had no problems. The moment she entered the classroom, everything fell silent. Alex's appearance made everyone stare. Seconds later, she heard insults, whistles, and boos. It was a commotion. "Why is the trash in our classroom?" "Maybe he's here to check out the freshmen. I've heard that this year's selection has quite a few handsome men." Alex was calmly listening to all the insults, as she silently swore to herself. Whoever spat those words at her, she would pay them back with interest. She made her way to an empty seat at the last row and turned to look out the window, completely ignoring those ignorant fools. Thinking back, one couldn't blame the old Alex for her actions. Since she couldn't manifest, she naturally lost all interest in learning. She liked handsome guys. She was, after all, a young girl. This was also understandable. But how was she going to deal with these bullies? Episode 10. Returning to the academy. "Why is this trash in our classroom?" "Maybe he's here to check out the freshmen. I've heard that this year's selection has quite a few handsome men," another voice cried out in exaggeration. Boisterous laughter filled the classroom as more voices chimed in. "I've heard that he harassed Augustus Miller to the point that his followers almost killed him. No wonder he's been missing for so long. He was recuperating at home. He should just kill himself. Such useless trash shames the entire family." Alex was calmly listening to all the insults thrown at her, as she silently swore in her heart that whoever spat those words at her would be paid back with interest. She made her way to an empty seat in the last row and turned to look out the window, completely ignoring those ignorant fools. Thinking back, one can't blame the previous Alex Johnson for her actions. Since she could not manifest, she had naturally lost all interest in learning and studying. She liked handsome guys. She was a young girl after all. This was also understandable. However, her obsession was a little bit excessive. Considering her prominent background, she could not misuse her identity by bullying others, unlike other rich nobles who went around with their servants in tow, deriving pleasure from oppressing the poor and the weak. Everyone around Alex continued their discussions, until they saw that he had no response. The chatter slowly died out as the topics began to hover around the new freshmen in the selection trials. However, some gossipers couldn't keep their mouths shut, and continued digging out stories about Alex being the first trash to enter through the prestigious gates of the academy. The conversation soon steered into how this trash could gain admission into the academy. In the pavilions built along the beautiful lake were a group of youths who were also discussing the unforeseen appearance of Alex at the academy. "Augustus, don't tell me that trash is actually stalking you," one of the youths asked Augustus, who was the center of attention. Augustus indeed had a dashing appearance. If put into a modern context, he would be a movie star that ranked amongst the top. Hearing that question, Augustus furrowed his brows. "Yes, I think that might be true. Perhaps that waste couldn't take it anymore and decided to follow you to the academy." The girl sitting beside Augustus was the very same one who had watched with him while Alex was being thrashed and beaten. When she heard that Alex was coming back to the academy, she could not help but ask, "Augustus, what would you do if he continues to stick to you?" Augustus clasped the girl's hand in his and said, "Don't worry, I will not allow him to do that." Alex had only been sitting in the classroom for a little while when she was summoned into Sir Matthew's office. When she entered, she saw Sir Matthew sipping green tea with a rather young, scholarly, and elegant man. Dressed in a white suit, the man carried himself as being an unapproachable and a no-nonsense kind of person. Seeing her come in, Sir Matthew's eyes dripped with disgust, but his face very quickly changed into one full of smiles as he said, "Alex Johnson, this gentleman here is the teacher for the first-year students. His name is Sir Richard." Alex offered a greeting to Sir Richard. Sir Richard turned to look at Alex, and there was no trace of disgust or displeasure on his face as he said, "You are Alex Johnson? Make sure you study diligently, or I will punish you as well." Alex was rather confused by Sir Richard's words and gave a puzzled look. "It's like this. If you have never attended classes before, we considered the fact that you might not be able to keep up with the other students in your class. So I went to speak to the headmaster about it. Today is the selection exercise day for new students, and I thought you should go learn together with the freshmen. That might be better for you. So from now onwards, you'll be Sir Richard's student," Sir Matthew explained. Alex looked at Sir Matthew's deeply concerned expression, and although he was trying his best to hide it, she could still detect that suppressed glint of joy in his eyes. With a student who was an epitome of worthlessness in his class, Sir Matthew had always been utterly ashamed of that embarrassing fact. Now that he was finally able to get rid of her, his heart could not help but sing with joy. No one would understand just how disgraceful it was to have a completely worthless and utterly useless student like him. And only heaven knows how the headmaster managed to dig up a teacher that would accept a student like that. "I will have to trouble Sir Richard from now onwards," Alex said, looking at Sir Richard. Although Sir Matthew's actions greatly displeased her, she also thought that since she had never studied in the academy before, joining the new students might not be a bad idea after all. "This is the key to your room," Sir Richard said, tossing a key over to Alex. "Key? I mandate all my students to reside within the academy dormitories. I know your grandfather is a respected general in our country, but you will have to stay here. You can go out during the day, but you must be back in the dormitory by bedtime. Only when we are not out on a mission can we go back home and sleep, and that is going to be once a week," Sir Richard explained. Although she did not fully understand the rationale behind it, Alex obediently complied. "All right, you can go back now. Move your belongings to the academy tomorrow, and we'll officially begin our classes the day after," Sir Richard continued. Alex nodded and took her leave after that. Since she had no more classes, she decided to make good use of her time by going to catch up on her training. Before leaving, she thought she should at least inform Elijah, but she was stopped before she could even reach the classrooms of the seniors. Alex Johnson, stay right there.